Hi, and welcome back, Flipsiders, to another episode of The Flip Side. So today we're going to get into another sort of philosophical question. And, off the top of my head, Andy, I perceive that you have something to say about this thing called reality is reality. Is that a right perception?
That is a great perception. Your perception just happens to be, this time, a reality.
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm so glad my perception's a reality this time.
It is good when perception is reality, but lots of times it isn't. And sometimes reality is reality, right? And so, again, this whole idea about reality is really based on God, right? Truth is reality. And there are times when we perceive things mistakenly. There's times when we perceive things on purpose. We don't want to know truth, right? And again, all of us have benefited from those moments. You and I have been talking lately about some tough moments, right? And it's really easy to get into the perception, right? And just start going like, well, I perceive that these people treated me poorly, or these people did it for this reason, or this reason, or this reason, right? And frequently we have to get back to the, well, you know what? We can do all that perception stuff and make it this conspiracy theory reality, or we can get to reality, right? The reality is this happened. Now I have to do something with this happen, right? Which is always where God wants us to be, right? I think it's fascinating. A man and men and women came to Jesus frequently. He said to them, "What do you want?" Right? What do you want me to do? What's your reality in this moment? And in that moment, they could have said anything, right? But what happens is, it's important for them to know that Jesus is going to do what he says he can do, right? And he is the reality in that moment, right? So there are times, again, making this complicated, there are times where we stand in front of God and we just need to be about, the reality of the situation is, I need this, God.
Yeah.
Right? Not the perception. I need all this other stuff. Let me give you one last example of that. Solomon was faced with this daunting task of taking over after his dad. Right? His prayer is fantastic because he outright admits very shortly, not like me, he says, listen, God, I know that this is a vast people. Who can rule them? Right? I cannot do this. I can't do. The reality is, I can't do this job. So when God says, what do you want from me, Solomon? I'll give you anything. What is it that you want? He could have asked for money. He could have asked for all of these things. But what he asked for was the wisdom, right, to be able to face the reality of ruling these people.
Yeah, and that also makes me think about the men who brought the paralytic to Jesus.
Yep.
And how often we put faith in perception, which if they had put faith in perception, they would have looked at the crowd, small house.
Yep.
There's no way the perception is there's no way we're going to get to Jesus. We should just give up on this. Yeah. But instead, they were so confident in the reality of who Jesus was. They'd take their friend up to a roof and they rip open the roof and they lower him down, and Jesus rewards their right reality.
Yeah, I think, again, we want to build things on the reality that our God does the impossible all the time. So when our perception is, there's no way we're going to have the finances to do this. There's no way this relationship's going to work out or be healed. There's no way that we're going to be able to get a house or a job, or we're going to be able to do the things that we feel like God has called us to do. There's no way, right? It's that apostles moment of, it would take 8 months to feed these people, like 8 months wages. There's no way, send them away. The reality is, we can't feed these people. And Jesus says, no, you feed them. That's the reality, is you need to feed them. How are we going to do that, right?
And that's a great segue into, what is the flip side of reality is reality?
Well, the flip side is what we talked about last week, right? that perception becomes our reality. There are people who are building their house on solid ground. They're building on Jesus, right? I know who Jesus is. I know what Jesus can do because I've read my Bible. I know what he has done. He's the same yesterday, today. He's going to be the same tomorrow. Right? So I can build something off of that, right? But if we're not careful, we build on the sand, right? That which, when the water comes, it's going to wipe away everything we've built, because everything's on perception. I perceive that God might kind of, sort of want me to do this. I perceive that this is how this works out. I perceive that God always works this way. Perception just works in so many different ways, right? And what happens is, we're just not building on solid ground.
And that's a great place for us to leave off, because we have to ask you the question of what are you building on? So as you go into your week, ask yourself, are you building on perception, or are you building on reality? If you're building on reality, is that reality Christ or something else? Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time here at The Flip Side.